Hello everyone, welcome to Book Club Preview. I'm Michael, and today we're looking at the story of More, Part 4, starting Part 4, Earth, looking at Chapter 14, Altered Air. Now, the chapter starts off with the author just talking about the circle of life. It's a circle of life is things die, or, well, I guess we can start on death, but let's start with life. Things grow, other things eat those things die, these things grow from that death, and then other things eat those. And it just kind of goes in a circle, right? Plants use the fertilizers from animals, animals eat the plants, other animals eat those animals, and they die, and plants grow out of that death, right? The circle of life. But there's also a circle of energy, meaning that plants take in energy from the sun, they take in CO2 from the air, they combine it, releasing oxygen, and they store energy, right, that can be used to be burned. And once that energy comes out, it comes out as energy, saying, for example, burning, or in our bodies, right? We burn that food in our bodies, creating energy and exhaling CO2. Or when we light it on fire, it creates fire and CO2 is released into the air. And then plants suck in that CO2 again and light and create energy, stored energy. And so that's kind of the circle of life, or the circle of energy. So the author goes in and talks about, well, we kind of knew that plants take in CO2 and release oxygen, but we wanted to test what it looks like for a plant to be in an atmosphere with more CO2 than normal. So maybe a little bit of CO2 in this one. Over here, a lot of CO2 in this one. And in this one, a bunch of CO2. And just to see how the plants survive or respond in those environments. There was a real big hiccup though, because as they were putting more CO2 inside these kind of controlled environments, they found that the CO2 made it too hot in this controlled environment because CO2 was absorbing the heat from the light and not letting it go quite as quickly. And so as they're trying to test these plants, they're seeing firsthand the results of temperature rising from more CO2 being in these controlled environments. And that really creates an issue to where the author is trying to use different methods to make these cages or these boxes or enclosures less hot. I'm not sure exactly if they find a solution. Maybe we'll find out about that later. But as far as our book really talks about, she only talks about the results of finding out that the CO2 is just creating much more heat from just simply having the lights on in the room. The author ends with talking about how CO2 emissions have increased by 1/3, I believe, in our atmosphere, and how we're going to look at those results in the next chapter. Some vocabulary words here. The first one is croning, and I honestly had to look that up because when I think of crone, I think of crone. So this could be pronounced crooning, but a crone is like an old woman. So this is like a way of singing or humming, and kind of like while you're thinking about the past. So when she asks someone on the subway or the bus or something, says, what do you think is the meaning of the circle of life? And the person starts, the circle of life, right? They start thinking about the Lion King, and they start humming it and singing it. And so they're kind of thinking about oh yeah, I remember that movie, and kind of humming it and singing it in a way of remembering. The next word here is, and I didn't know who this was, Hieronymus Bach. I'm not sure. If you're a study or lover of art, you probably know who this artist is. a very creative painter. I didn't remember the date, but hundreds of years ago. And he has these scenes that far away, you look at the scene, you're like, oh, that looks a little bit weird. But the closer you get, the more small, weird details you see. Maybe some little angel over here doing something, or some little demon over here, or some weird shape over here. And man, the pictures just look really confusing. And so when we talk about the cycle of life and the cycle of energy, if we look from it from a broad perspective, it looks pretty complicated. But when you get closer, whoa, it's even more complicated. And she uses this artist paintings as an analogy. Plexiglass. I threw this one in here because it actually took me a little while to, what is this word? I've actually don't think I've seen plexiglass spelled before. A plexiglass is like a plastic glass that can be used, and it just looks clear like glass, but it's much stronger when being hit. And so it's used a lot for safety and things like that. And then I had this last quote here, I believe. How slowly grinds the whetstone that sharpens the human mind. I probably should have put the page number on here. But the author uses this expression, a whetstone. Okay, if you imagine like old days, 200 years ago maybe, that a blacksmith would use this huge wheel, okay, this huge rock wheel, and they'd kind of turn it. And then they would take like a knife and rub it on this wheel while it's turning. And you can see maybe sparks in your imagination as it's going through. That stone is called a whetstone. And there could be small ones too that maybe soldiers take, and they kind of can sharpen their sword as they're using this special rock to sharpen their weapons. That's a whetstone. And so the mind grows slowly or gets sharp slowly is pretty much what she's saying here. How slowly grinds the whetstone that sharpens the mind. So the whetstone that's used to give us intelligence, knowledge, it takes a long time and it's very slow. That leads us to our discussion question. How many plants do you have in your house? This could be a little bit of a weird discussion question, but as I was reading this story, I just kept thinking like, man, how many plants do I have in my bedroom, in my kitchen, in my living room? How many plants do we take care of? How much oxygen are we trying to push back into the air? And oh man, I'll tell you the answer later. But how many plants do you have in your house? Of course, please make your own discussion question. That is all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, if you have any questions about the video today, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. If you had any other vocabulary words that you wanted to know what they meant, let me know. And also, if you're interested in maybe joining one of these book clubs, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.